Hello and welcome to another installment of Topics for 10 for the Living of These Days. You name it. It may pick another name. Who knows? But just taking the time on this Thursday evening. And the, the theme would be showing up, the showing up edition. I've been wrestling today with the concept of that really life, a higher percentage, maybe life is 80%, 90% just showing up was just something that I had going in my head. And in light of that, I was kind of exploring, and I found a book, and I'll read a few excerpts. But starting off, showing up is defined as the act of bearing witness to people's joy or pain and true selves, validating their experiences, easing their load, and communicating that they are not alone in this life. So showing up for another person, showing up for yourself. And that's echoed in Brene Brown, who said, there's nothing more daring than showing up, putting ourselves out there and letting ourselves be seen. So showing up on behalf of another, but also showing up on behalf of ourselves, being truly authentically ourselves. And so this led me to a book I discovered today, The Art of Showing Up, How to Be There for Yourself and Your People by Rachel Wilkerson Miller. The subtext being how on friendship in the age of flakiness. So the key of showing up, and I'll just share a few excerpts because I think it's something in this time as we emerge from the pandemic. We've learned creative ways of showing up for one another through technology, and there were those times of deep grief and fracture when we couldn't show up for one another. And so this might be something to explore. And so a couple excerpts and Miller's definition, and maybe you could look it up on Amazon, or The Art of Showing Up. But some of her chapters, getting to know yourself, making space, showing up for your body, showing up for yourself every damn day is a chapter. Showing up for yourself when she writes, when shit gets real and shit gets hard. How to make friends, another chapter. The care and keeping of friends. The art of noticing is another chapter. And when they're going through hard shit, she definitely leaves no room, for uh, questioning as she uses very strong language. But I think she's really spot on. She writes, the thing about showing up is that it is not exactly easy. It doesn't just happen. It takes intentionality, effort, and practice. And truly showing up for others requires you to do something that can be even harder. To show up for yourself first. That means really getting to know yourself, taking care of your physical and mental health, being kind to yourself, and setting boundaries. Showing up for yourself will allow you to be a better and more present friend or partner, will prevent resentment, one sided relationships, and burnout, and will help you figure out exactly what showing up for others should look like in practice. She writes, showing up for yourself isn't about feeling happiness exactly. It's about feeling grounded and content and believing that you are enough. I love this. She goes on in her introduction about what is showing up. And this is her definition. My definition of showing up follows a similar but slightly different trajectory as that of the University of Michigan's Compassion Lab. They define compassion as noticing, feeling, and responding. I think of showing up as noticing, processing, naming, and responding. She continues, noticing is perceiving behavior, words, or circumstances that communicate a need. And the need doesn't have to be negative. It could be a need to celebrate or connect. Number 2, processing. Using the knowledge you already have about yourself, about the other person, about certain behaviors, etc., to analyze what you've just noticed. And number 3, naming, is identifying that what's really going on here, the deeper need, the bigger behavior, the narrative of what actually happened, and recognizing its legitimacy and worthiness. Naming can be sort of small, etc. What is being describing sounds really that are annoying, or what is significant, that is, what is being described sounds incredibly abusive, or naming as powerful, is validating, and is how our experiences begin to take shape and make sense to us. And then after naming, number 4 is responding, is reacting in a way that makes the receiver, which, remember, might mean you, feel seen, supported, and more whole. And by the way, in practicing, responding might be naming the behavior. What does it take to show up? Showing up for yourself and others is rooted in 9 core values: curiosity, intelligence, intuition, compassion, generosity, creativity, self-awareness, confidence, and a willingness to be vulnerable. Wow. She kind of concludes this portion with the reality of the naming, showing up for yourself and showing up for others. I then now invite you into that question. What does it mean to you to show up for yourself, to honor yourself, to not degrade yourself or abuse yourself, but to truly be yourself? Again, if you are created in the image of God, Imago Dei, if God's image is imbued in you, what is that? How do you show up for the God image within you? And then for others, because we recognize the Christ in others, or recognize the image of God that others are created in, then how do we show up for them? In love and generosity and kindness, and in a world where people are just not showing up at all at times, more times than not, or showing up with a selfish agenda. So I invite you into that question, as I am living into that question as well, is how do we show up for ourselves, and how do we show up for others? How do we show up for God? How do we show up for love and justice? How do we show up for justice when another person is being abused and harmed and relegated to outcast? How do we show up for them? Jesus has showed how he calls us to show up, which is really imbued in the cross: self-sacrifice, self-giving. So I invite you into that question of showing up. Maybe take a look at The Art of Showing Up by Rachel Wilkerson Miller. Brene Brown has some amazing books and words on vulnerability and shame. Those that we need to be more vulnerable with one another. We don't need to let shame define us. It prevents us from truly showing up for who we are and who we are for others. So, well, until we meet again, I invite you, find ways, even tonight or tomorrow, show up for someone, or show up for yourself, show up for God. Peace.